here. So today we are, I'm sure as you've seen, we're working on building commercial awareness and using the STAR technique. Also on the event, and like things, I'm sure you heard that our other co-founder Kelvin was supposed to be speaking at the event, and his kind of focus is like the STAR technique and using that in applications. Unfortunately, he can't be here right now. He may be joining us later. But yeah, so I don't know if he'll be here, but we'll see. If not, I'll be covering the STAR. I mean, it's called STAR R on here, but there's different variations. I'm sure you've heard of it, technique. So otherwise, I'll be covering that as well. So you might have to bear with me a couple minutes with that because I'm not really familiar with that as much, but I've still used it before, so I can probably give you all the advice I can. Okay, so let's get started. Yeah. Okay, so what is commercial awareness? Commercial awareness is the understanding of how your business and industry make money. For example, so for work experience applications, commercial awareness is such an amazing skill to have. And it's also like, especially I find for like year 12 and 13 applications, it can really be the decider between that's more like targeted and encouraged to use in applicants that are at university level. But if you're in year 12 and 13, it's a great thing to like differentiate you between other candidates who may haven't heard of commercial awareness before. And so in other words, commercial awareness is the understanding of what your company needs to be profitable, successful, and to serve its customers well. So just having a general knowledge of like current business news stories, kind of like the things that are going on in the financial market currently, any like huge deals, things you've heard of, though that's like all kind of useful. Or like even if there's anything like legal wise that's affecting corporate law firms, like they're huge things to bring up, and it just shows that you have like a real understanding and also like an interest in the area that you want to work in or the program that you want to get onto. So why you need commercial awareness? Again, I've kind of covered this just now, but many companies see commercial awareness as a key requirement in potential recruits. Taking the time to understand how an organization operates and makes profit, the industry that the organization is a part of, all that kind of things like demonstrate a high level of like interest, awareness, just kind of, it gives you that extra edge in your application to show that you've done the research, you've looked at the news, and you really understand kind of the aims and objectives of the company. Okay, so now we're going to quickly run over how to use commercial awareness in your applications, and then we're going to take part in a task with 2 articles and using the Pastel technique. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that one before. So here's an example. You can take a screenshot of this, by the way, but again, don't plagiarize because the firm will know. But here's an example of a successful application for a work experience that I was a part of at Clifford Chance, one of the Magic Circle law firms here in the UK, and this is like using commercial awareness successfully. So as you can see in this, application I wrote, this is just one of the paragraphs where I kind of like open it up, including a Model United Nations conference that I was a part of, and kind of the aim of that conference was climate change, and then I kind of linked that interest I had that I developed in that to like back to the law and back to the industry, and I linked this to lots of the work that Clifford Chance is involved in, because they're quite they're like, the firm in general is very passionate about you know, again, like more environmental law things. So I kind of linked that to a renewable energy company called Vattenfall that Clifford Chance had recently done some advisory work in, and kind of how you can like research this and like commercial awareness and how you can like find these things. Often a great way to link it, especially to the work the firm's been involved in recently, is using the firm's website, because they have kind of like a news section where partners will just like write up a news story about some work that they've done recently. So you can use that and like incorporate that into your applications and pick out something that you've done and link that then to something that the firm has done. I find that that's really helpful. Yeah, so then that's kind of like the link, and then just like the concluding sentence at the end. Okay, and if anyone has any questions, or Tasnia, could you just tell me if anyone has any questions, because I can't see the chat.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay, thanks. Okay, and now we're going on to Pastel. So it sounds like a bit of a weird name, but Pastel essentially is kind of like the way in which they recommend you analyze like news stories, if you can think about it. So like again, for application wise, this can be a technique that you can use if they ask you to talk about commercial awareness as the actual application question, or even in like slip it into a question that may be like, why this firm, why law, like try and use these when you're talking about commercial awareness. Or even if you're doing like an interview at a firm, assessment center, that kind of thing, where you have to talk about commercial awareness, using the Pastel technique and just like thinking in your head, like PESTLE, when you're describing a news story or like what you found interesting, is really great to make sure that they know that you have like a broad understanding. And when you're looking at the news, you're not just thinking, what is the legal argument? What is the political one? That you've really got like a broad range of understanding. So we're going to now practice putting the Pastel technique into practice. And we're going to be using that with 2 news articles that I found on ASOS. So here are the 2 news articles that you can use to analyze these. I think you guys have been sent those, but I think Tasnia is going to put them in the chat as well. So if you
could into the chat right now.
Okay, nice. Thank you. So if you can just take a look at those quickly and think for a few minutes about kind of like using Pastel, and like I'll go back to the slide so you have it, and like the ways in which you can apply Pastel to these 2 articles. But also remember, there won't always be like all 6. Like sometimes there won't be a political one. Sometimes it will be difficult to find a legal one, like link to the article. If you can find all 6, that'd be really great. Okay, I'm going back to that slide so you can all see everything. So you've just got 10 minutes to read through both those articles and try and apply the Pastel technique to that. And then you guys can, if you want to turn on your cameras, if you want to turn your mics, you don't have to, but then we can discuss that and talk about what you found. I know we said 10 minutes, but if any of you guys finish early and you want to put finished or done in the chat so we know that you're done, then you can do that.
Rob, he said in the chat just to give him 2 more minutes.
Okay, that's fine. And also let us know if you have any questions before we get started, or like you don't understand anything in the article. Okay, that's been 10 minutes now. Has everyone finished or near enough finished? You can unmute yourself or put something in the chat.
Someone's asked, is it okay if they haven't?
Yeah, that's completely fine. Don't worry. I mean, I've got 6, but like that's at a push. Like some of them are like tenuous links, so that's completely fine. Okay, so let's just go back to. Oh, can I go back? Yeah, to the pastel technique. So, starting off, what did everyone find for the political one? Anyone got anything? If you want to unmute and share, that'd be great.
For the political one, I found it a bit difficult to find like one consistent theme politically, but correct me if I'm wrong. The quote where Don says, "We want to evolve from a UK-centric brand," I think that's kind of political in the sense that it wants to expand on a global scale, and obviously with that there will be a lot of political issues because it wants to double the size of its brand to the US and European scale.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that sounds great. Definitely. So like thinking about like global politics and globalization and how that works. And then also the other one I think in there was the supply chain issues. Did anyone catch that, like about Brexit and supply chain issues? That's been something that's like in the news recently. I can't remember if the article directly references Brexit, but that's something that's been in the media a lot. I don't know if anyone's heard about like the lorry drivers and like not having that, and then there being like loads of supply chain issues for lots of companies. So there's also that, which is a big one politically. Yeah. So does anyone have anything else to add to that one, or has anyone got the, oh, I'm on the wrong slide, one for economic?
I mean, this one was a bit easier to find in the sense that obviously the first section of the article is completely revolved around like its profits. So due to like rising costs and the supply chain issues, ASOS can't really amass the profits that it's intended to. So that was why I got in a more simple.
Yeah, definitely. And like also thinking about like there being let me try. Yeah, so like as well, like with there being like supply chain issues, like maybe like losses in like share price and things like that, and how like as well with, especially we have to think about with kind of like the media as well, and like the role that the media plays like in economics, and how like when things hit the media, like, you know, confidence drops, and then like share price can drop as well. So like thinking about like that economically as well. But they're like some really great points. And then does anyone have any like social points to add? Come on, guys, this is supposed to be interactive. Let's try and...
A bit far-fetched, but social issues and economic can sort of be linked in the sense that
yeah, definitely.
The company benefited from online shopping during the COVID pandemic. That's a social issue in itself. So obviously that's a positive rather than a negative, but that's
yeah, that does sound great. Yeah, and also that, remember, like there will always be like overlap even with like politics and economics, and like economics and environmental and social and environmental issues. Yeah, there's definitely always crossover. Something that I had as well was like the fact that ASOS is like a fast fashion brand, and kind of like the implication that like supply chain issues will have on a fast fashion brand, and kind of like the way that like that will be received by customers. Yeah, so that was definitely like something that I thought of as well. Does anyone have anything for technological issues? This one is a bit of a difficult one, so if you didn't have anything, it doesn't matter, and I can go through that.
This was the one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. So with the technology point, I was thinking less of like kind of like issues with supply chain, and I was thinking more of ASOS as like an online brand, and how kind of like environmental issues may like reflect on that, as well as the other one. Let me have a look. Yeah, and so I guess like obviously because they're an online brand and people can't go in store with supply chain, obviously that's like a bigger issue for them, because if they have supply chain issues, no one's you know, like they don't have any money coming in, because if people's products aren't being delivered, then there's going to be a big problem. So technology wise, it's not like huge technology, but definitely the fact that ASOS is like a completely online brand and they don't have any in-person stores, kind of supply chain issues would really affect them. So that could be one that you can have. And then legal wise, did anyone think of anything? Or do we struggle with this one as well? Nope, that's fine. I can go through that one as well. So you could also have like if you've got like staff leaving and that's becoming a problem, then there could always be issues like employment wise. So you can link that back to employment law and whether there's going to be anything there. Again, with the supply chain issues, and if people's products aren't being delivered, then you've got lots of like where contracts aren't being met. So like if you have like next day delivery and something's not being delivered next day, then that would be a real issue. Kind of.
I got one.
Yeah, go for it.
I got one. So you could say the drop in profits, obviously there will be less revenue coming into the business. So that could lead to like shortage of wages for workers.
Definitely.
That's like a legal issue in itself.
Yeah, that's like a legal issue, an economic issue, a social issue that like reaches everything. So that's definitely one, and I didn't think of that. So that's a great one. You could also have like environmental, like with environmental law issues, are there like targets being like created because it's become a legal issue? Like is there kind of like that kind of background behind it? As well with like taxes and environment, like there's lots of things there that you could comment on. And then finally, environmental, again, this one should be pretty obvious because we're talking about environmental targets, but has anyone got anything with that?
Yeah, so I think this was the most obvious one, the net zero carbon emissions. So it wants to reduce the amount of like greenhouse gases, carbon emissions, all of that in the environment, obviously due to the demand of consumers as well, and like the general well-being of society on a global scale.
Yes, definitely. That's a big one. And as well, like you can link this back to like socially. Lots of like, I'm guessing like ASOS's consumers are looking to buy from more ethical brands. So like brand image is a huge one, and like being seen as more environmentally conscious, especially as like a completely online fast fashion brand, like ASOS, where they have a huge like clothing like product turnover, and like they don't have like factories in this country, and they take a lot from like other brands as well. So there can be like a lot of carbon emissions in kind of like a business that has a structure like this. So those kind of things are always important to think about. So now, does anyone quickly have any questions about that or anything else to add? Anyone, or even Donna and Tasnia, do you guys have anything?
I have nothing to add. I'm just going to say that the meeting's going to end in 4 minutes, so I'll restart it. But if you guys just rejoin in 4 minutes, that would be great. But for now, you can stay on the call.
Okay, I'll quickly just like introduce the next thing. Then, okay, so next we're going to be having a look at, you might have heard it's been called the star with 2 R's technique, but there's different variations, but this is generally, we call it the star technique, but this is the star R technique. And this was Calvin's part, so we'll cover that in the next bit. So I'm just going to quickly introduce it for everyone. Has anyone heard of it before? Quickly, if you want to just put it in the chat or unmute yourself. Nope. Not heard of it. That's okay. This one is like one that lots of the law firms really push when they talk about applications, and like using it for kind of, it's more of like a problem question, and you approach this when you kind of talk about a problem or something that you've encountered and like how you've shown a skill. So sometimes the question might be something like, give an example of a time when you've been a team leader, and then you give situation, task, action, result, how you applied that, and then a reflection at the end on how you could do it better next time, and be able to like hit all the points that they're looking for someone who can like recount like something that's happened where they know they've done something positive and done something well, but also how they can apply that and then reflect back on it. I think the reflection is really important at the end, and being able to make sure that you can always like look for something, even if you did something great, like look for something where you can improve yourself and apply your kind of skills better is always really helpful. Does anyone have any questions on that before we start? Nope. I don't really want to start the task yet. Does everyone want to end the should we end the meeting now and then come back and then we can go on to the task?
Yeah, I'll end the meeting now and then we can restart it.
Cool.
I'll see you guys.
See you in a minute. So star technique, covered it, done, right. And then the next thing, this is an example from one of Calvin's successful applications. I'm not sure what this one is from, but you, again, if you want to screenshot this one, but please don't plagiarize because people will catch you out. And also, like, once we've taught you how to do it, you'll be fine doing it yourself. But here's an example of using the star technique, and this is in Calvin's Law Society. So let's have a read through. So you can take some time to read it, and then we'll kind of go through and explain it. Okay, has everyone had the chance to give that a read? Finished reading it? Do you want to just put in the chat if you finished? Okay, nice. Okay, so we'll move on. So can anyone, like, I don't know if you want to start and identify where there's, like, they've used the star technique, if you can point out any of kind of like situation, task, application, any of those. Can you see any of them?
I think in terms of action, there's quite a few, but where it says, I forgot it now.
That's okay. You can take your time.
So I had to give hints and simplify legal jargon to allow for simplicity of the task. That's a clear example of the action within the criteria.
Yeah, definitely. And if we go back out and have a look, did you say action? Yeah, so that would be a really great example of action, because in the beginning you can see, like, during my role as the co-leader, so they've kind of like given the situation that they're in, I have to create a murder mystery activity. That's again the situation they're in, and then to make sure they understood the task. So there you kind of have the task is like helping people to understand things, and then giving hints and simplifying legal jargon is the action there, and then the result is, as you can see, it's really clear that as a result of this task, it allowed students to develop their thought process when processes when analyzing a legal problem. That's kind of like the outcome of the situation, and how, like, really making sure that when you answer these types of questions that you can like present how your actions have had a positive result. That's always super helpful. Yeah, so result, and then application. Let's have a look. Yeah, so further to this, it allowed them to think of both perspectives when given a hard task. So that's more of like the outcome as well. The murder mystery and legal problem workshop was a great icebreaker between me and my students, as it allowed for easier communication and teamwork. That's like a reflection on the task, and also like how Kelvin responded to the problem, which is always really positive. Like I said before, being really reflective kind of shows that you're not one of those, because again, I'm sure people will relate if they've been in situations with law students, is lots of the time people get a bit arrogant and they think they've done everything completely right. But being able to reflect and know that you can always improve and your skills can always improve is really positive, and something that people will look for in applicants. So again, thus increasing the efficiency to solve the answer to the murder mystery. So it's more kind of like reflection on that. And then to conclude, the role as a law society leader does pose challenges, as I have to find new and innovative ways to intrigue my students whilst making sure knowledge is engaged. So there's more of kind of like, again, application result all kind of mixed in there. Also, I gained improvement in my advocacy skills and the ability to simplify complex text. So there's more there. And then right at the end, there's kind of like applying the skills that Kelvin has gained through his role as co-leader of the Law Society to being a trainee solicitor, and kind of like the role that he's applying for. So, and this also shows like a really clear understanding of kind of like the role of a trainee, which is also something that is really helpful to include in applications, because you find that actually lots of people don't know what a trainee does and doesn't really know like the day-to-day kind of like what they get up to. So that's always really positive. So I will be required to act in the best interests of my client. This will include clarifying contracts, negotiating well with opposing parties on deals or settlements to protect my client's financial/commercial interests and present convincing arguments in court. So again, all those things are super helpful. Quickly, does anyone have any questions about that? Or can any of you kind of think of examples where you've like had to use this, or think of examples where you think you can use the situation, task, application, the STAR technique?
Yeah, I think I had to use this recently when I was applying to Latham and Watkins for work experience.
Nice.
So like in the cover letter, I had to talk about like how I'm interested in commercial law, etc.
Yeah.
So I had to pick out, similar to this, I had to pick out activities I've done and how I went about approaching that, etc.
Yeah.
So it was pretty good.
Yeah, that sounds great. So again, like using this technique is such a great way to kind of like hit all those points that law firms are looking for. So like I was saying about being reflective, you know, like being able to analyze kind of like the things that you get up to. But also I think, so they're like the positives of using this technique. There's also sometimes it can be like, I know you were saying like it's easy to do, but sometimes it can be really hard to find a good example of a situation you've been in, because, you know, we think like all the time, like, oh yes, I'm an organized person, or I'm a good team leader. But actually, when you're thinking about it and you're trying to find an example, you're sitting there like racking your brain, like, when have I been a good leader? So sometimes that can even be like the first hurdle, is like trying to find a situation where you've demonstrated that skill.
Yeah, no, I agree, because when I was actually writing the cover letter, at first it seemed quite easy, but it took me quite a while to like think about properly which activity should I actually put, because there's some that are quite superficial. So
yeah, definitely. And also, like, as well, I think the other difficult part is like I was saying about like reflection is is like, I'm guilty of it as well, 100%, is I think like, oh yeah, like I'm a great team leader, you know, like I'm the president of my school's law society as well, and I think like, yeah, that's great, like I give these like presentations, and you know there's always positive feedback, but at the same, you have to be able to be really reflective and think, actually, did I do my best? Like, do I do my best all the time? I approach, it's also hard to find like problems that you approach as well, and how you kind of like get over that and like solve the problem. And lots of the time we think like, yes, I can do no wrong and I'm always like an amazing law society president, but actually there can be kind of like things where you haven't done 100% your best, and using those examples are really helpful. And don't ever think that like reflecting and like saying when you've done something wrong is like a drawback in your application, because they don't want perfect applicants, and kind of like demonstrating that you're always willing to learn and you're always willing to reflect is super helpful. And it also shows that you can like take criticism. If you can be critical of yourself, then like they know that like if you're going to take that role, or if you're especially, I guess this is more applies for like training contracts and like job applications as well, but if you can take criticism and you're always willing to adapt, learn and change, like that's really what they're looking for in an applicant. So let me have a look. That's okay. Does anyone have any more questions about using this, or like I guess anything with regards to questions? I think we're going to move on to questions now.
Yeah, so a few of our participants have questions before, and if you guys have any more questions, feel free to put it in the chat. One of the questions was, what are good resources to improve commercial awareness? Okay, so I guess my really, like, let me go back to the first slide as well, just so we're on the front. Yeah, my favorite ones are the Financial Times news briefing. I listen to that when I'm getting ready in the morning, and they come up with one every day. And lots of the time they'll pick up like stories and do them for like 2 or 3 days and kind of like cover them. And they're not in like super amounts of detail, but they give you a really, really nice overview. And because they're every day, you kind of like get a different sector every day. So sometimes they'll have something on tech, sometimes they'll have something on the stock market, sometimes they'll have something about like car companies, sometimes it will be like a bit more of like a global politics issue. And I think that gives you like a really nice range. Another one, obviously, again, is the UpLaw news round, the weekly news roundup, because the weekly news roundup is great. And Donna puts it together, so she can tell you all about that. But generally, I think the best part about that, and the thing that I use it for the most, is applications. And especially because we talk about on there like news and things that are going on in the big firms, I think that's really helpful, because it's sometimes difficult to research like what kind of the firms are getting up to and what they're doing, apart from using their website. And even because of like legal requirements and things, they have to keep lots of stuff like a bit quiet, and they can't really explain much. But I think the weekly news roundup goes into so much detail, so that's always super helpful if you've got like an application for something coming up. I'm just going to have a look at that so I can show you guys. And Donna, if you want to add anything to that, I don't know if I've explained that very well.
You did. You're so sweet about it. Well, I think the best part about it is actually putting it together and reading the news and doing it. So if you do have the chance to actually interact with what news you're reading, like that will actually help to make sure that it stays in your head. Because I know a lot of the weekly news roundups actually stay in my head even after a few weeks, because I've had to read it so many times to actually fully understand it and summarize it to put into the slides. So I guess you could do it for like newspapers in your school if you have any of those, or you could, make your own little blog where you talk about the news.
Yeah,
something.
That sounds like a great idea. Or even like if your school has a law society, like I know for a period of time, like we don't carry it on anymore, but we in my law society, every kind of month, we'd come up with this kind of like newsletter that would have like applications and like things that you can apply for both year 12 and 13, and kind of like some big news stories going on at the minute. So if you guys want to bring that to your law society, that's a great idea. So I'm just going to show you guys, I don't know if you can see, oh, it's a bit blurry, but there's an example of one of the recent UpLaw ones on Slaughter and May on a deal with BA. I'm sure Donna can tell you loads about. And then the most recent one was about COP26. And I actually used this one recently in a mock interview. So they're really helpful, trust me. Yeah, are really great. So definitely check them out, and you can save them as well. So if you want, and you can create folders now on Instagram as well when you save stuff. So definitely like save them, use them later, come back to them if you need to. All of that is really helpful too. And then as well with commercial awareness, I find that getting a range of newspapers and like news sources, so making sure that you're never like just looking at really left-wing newspapers, just looking at really right-wing or like centrist newspapers, make sure that you get like a broad range. And you don't think that there's that much bias in business and financial news, but there is always bias. So make sure that you get a wide range, like look at The Guardian, have a look at like even having a look at American papers I also find really helpful, and like have a look at the Washington Post is quite good. Yeah, just make sure that you kind of use as much as you can.
Thank you for the great advice and reasons, Abby. It's actually really helpful. I've taken note of some of the ones you said as well, because application cycles are coming up. And our second question is, how do you research a law firm?
Okay, so this is always a difficult question, and I did make a reel about this, but I think it accidentally got deleted. But essentially how I go about it is I start straight away with the firm's website, and like I was saying before, like the firms will have this like news kind of section, and like even if you go to the Clifford Chance website like right now, you will be able to click on their kind of like their areas, or like even if you search like Clifford Chance news, you'll find stuff. If you're looking for like legal news as well, don't know how reputable this source is, but the Legal Cheek, sometimes they have like funny news articles, but they also have some serious ones as well. And like I would like, if that's your first port of call, I wouldn't rely on everything from there, because I don't know how accurate it is, but it's quite a good place to start if you're looking for like what the firms are getting up to recently. So definitely have a look at those. Yeah, so that's a good one. And then from there, like once I've had a look at like what they've got going on, I'll usually pick up like 1 or 2 stories, and then I'll have a look at like the partners who are on those deals. And lots of the partners are like really big on LinkedIn. So find their name, because their name will be on there. Find their LinkedIn, and sometimes they'll make like a LinkedIn post about it where they'll go into so much more detail than just what the firm's got on the page. So that's a great way to go about it. And then also for like researching firms, like not just like what they've been involved in, but researching like their sectors and like what they do in that way. I always like to start with like just to get a feel for like how international and things is, especially if it's Magic Circle. The Lawyer Portal have a really great kind of page on the Magic Circles where they list like how many offices they have, like how many trainees they have and things like that. Just that kind of gives you like a little bit of an insight. And then the firm website, like the firm, each firm and like all of the law firms, you think they're all the same, but they are incredibly different. And if you speak to people from different firms, like this is the hardest part as well, is because lots of my firm research is done from like speaking to people in the firms now. I've had the opportunity to do so, but you kind of like, the more you speak to trainees, the more they tell you like the differences. And like if you ask people, like a great question for people, and this builds up like your firm research all the time, is like, why did you pick Clifford Chance? I literally asked all of the trainees I spoke to at a networking event, like, why did you pick it? Like, why that over like Linklaters? Why that over Freshfields? Why that over Clifford or over Slaughter and May and things like that? And that will give you like a real insight insight into the culture of the firm, and in that way, because that you can't really like research as much just from the website. But also the firm will have loads of like keywords that they use a lot. Like for Clifford Chance, like innovation is a huge one, and they care a lot about like technology and like increasing in using like legal tech. So like researching the things that the firm are really passionate about is also really helpful. And I know like Linklaters had like a huge push for diversity and inclusion, and you know, they just got like a female managing partner for the first time in the London office. So definitely like looking at things like that, and like what also the firm will have like events and stuff, and that can also be helpful at like looking at what they're like passionate about and what they're trying to improve, and that can be helpful. So I think, yeah, that's like my main points for research. And then usually I just have like one document, and I kid you not, before I do an event at a firm as well, and before I even write an application, it's just this long stream of research about everything I found out. And I try and use those like keywords that come up again and again and again, and try and be discreet about it and like use them in your application. I find that works really well.
Thank you so much. Once again, some of really useful advice, especially like going into more detail, like you said, up in LinkedIn, taking initiative. I think that's really good. I think law firms love to see you take initiative and to do something different to all the other applicants who don't know that. So thank you so much for the great advice. And our last question is commercial awareness becoming a key part of most legal jobs, or is it specific to the commercial sectors and firms?
Okay, so with commercial awareness and legal jobs, like in general, even if you're not just like in the corporate and commercial world, I think commercial awareness it doesn't just have to be like how's the stock market going, like it doesn't just have to be like what are the big businesses doing, you know, and it can also be, so like say you want to be like, I don't know, a family law solicitor and you want to work in family law, or a family law barrister, then like making sure that you're aware of like, I don't know, has there been any changes, like have Parliament been legislating anything that's like huge in family law that you could like, is there been any new changes to family law that could really impact kind of like the cases and the work that you'd be working on, or even what's another great one I'm trying to think of, so like has there been any like cases in the news recently, or like cases that have gone to the Supreme Court that kind of affect your industry? They're always super helpful as well. So I guess in that way, no, it's not just limited to corporate or commercial sectors, although like I guess it's more of a focus in corporate and commercial sectors. But commercial awareness you can apply to any job, doesn't have to be legal, doesn't have to be financial, literally anything.
Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions we have for now, and I don't see any more in the chat.